From WBBZ-TV Sports, it's time to Beat the Champ. Now, here are your hosts, Paul Peck and Sue Novoitsky.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to Beat the Champ. I'm Paul Peck, along with Buffalo Bowling Hall of Famer Sue Novoitsky, and we have moved to the island, Sue. We're in Grand Island at Mallwitz's Island Lanes for the next month of our Beat the Champ competition. But what is very familiar about our first trip here to Island Lanes is the guy who's going to lead us off, because our friend, our buddy, our co-host, as it seems, Chuck Jagodzinski, is our first bowler, the most successful Beat the Champ bowler so far, Sue, and he's back again here. What makes him so good?
Well, the fact that he knows his game, he knows how to adjust. As you can see, when you go place to place, you encounter different changes in the environment and how the lanes react, how they change, and he's good at that. He knows how to adjust. Well,
we'll see how he adjusts here at Island Lanes. First match will be against Andy Rettig, then a newcomer, Andy Moran, is next, and then Mike Zarcone. If Chuck Jagodzinski's the most successful guy, Mike's in that next group of guys that are terrific Beat the Champ bowlers.
And so there's different obstacles for him. He's got a left-hander to deal with, and we don't know how the lanes are going to play out for him. He's got a house bowler in Andy. Andy knows this place very, very well. And Mike bowls well everywhere, so he'll have his job cut out for him.
All right, so it should be a fun first week here for Beat the Champ at Mallwitz's Island Lane, so let's get rolling. There's Chuck Jagodzinski on the left, our returning champ from last month's Beat the Champ adventures at Classic Lanes. And you briefly saw Andy Rettig, who we'll see in just a moment. But we will start things off with Chuck Jagodzinski leading us off in our first match of the day here at Island Lanes in Grand Island. And in typical Chuck Jagodzinski fashion, Sue, he starts off impressively.
Yeah, look in the introduction, we talked about how he's really good at reading lanes and really good at understanding where to play. And the practice pair hooked a little bit more than the actual TV pair, but he figured it out very quickly.
And there's Andy Rettig, our challenger, 45 years old from Hamburg. This is his third Beat the Champ show appearance. Andy has 1 win and 1 loss. In the previous 2 shows, he was one of our weekly winners back at the Tonawanda Bowling Center. And Andy will have to be on top of his game to take on Chuck Jagodzinski. First roll for Andy shows us that maybe he is right there.
It's always nice to answer the call when someone gets, you don't want anybody to get a good head start on you. So now he also read the lanes well, made the proper adjustments to get going in this match.
As I mentioned, Andy's from Hamburg, employed by the Department of Homeland Security, 45 years old, lefty, as you may have already noted. And for all the latest information on our show, make sure you like the Beat the Champ page on Facebook and follow us on Twitter for all the updated qualifying and results and news and notes about the always exciting and very successful show that we've been happy to bring to you guys at Beat the Champ. And Andy will leave that 7-pin in the second frame here.
I think it's interesting to point out that they put new pins in for the show today, so we may not see pins bouncing around as much as normal. You'll see some more corner pins more than usual with new pins.
All right, now without getting too technical on it, because I'm just not that smart, why would new pins be less prone to bounce around and fall than old pins?
Because the bottoms are very flat on new pins, and they tend to wear as from use, and they get a little bit more rounded, and they fall a little bit more, a little bit easier.
Makes perfect sense. You're getting a science lesson here right off the bat on Beat the Champ from Sue. And this one's going to be the 4-pin that will hang up for Chuck Jagodzinski. As I mentioned, Chuck has been the most successful Beat the Champ bowler since we have brought the show back to you at the beginning of the year in 2016. 8 wins and 2 losses in 10 appearances for Chuck. This is the 6th show that he has appeared on, and he has 3 weekly wins, which means Sue has handed him that trophy 3 times already, and that amount of weekly wins trails only Matt Zazowski, who has 4 weekly wins. So Chuck has been as dominant, Sue, as any bowler we've had on this show, and there you get one of those new pins that would not fall.
Yeah, the changes here will be a little bit different too, because this is wood lanes, and most of the time you know, I say on this show we've seen them probably 50-50, which is a little more unusual because most places have the synthetic overlay over the wood, and this is actually wood. So the breakdown is definitely different on wood than it is on synthetic.
Right, and we've talked a little bit about this as we've gone through the different houses that we've bowled at. Like you said, the wood being natural, it swells a little bit, it shrinks a little bit, it's worn a little bit more, it's a little less pure than the synthetic lanes.
And well, the fronts tend to wear more. Like you'll see in the front of the lane when he sets down his ball, that the wood is darker and it's a little bit more worn out. And so it creates, there's less oil there and the ball starts to hook a little bit earlier. So that does not happen on synthetic lanes because it doesn't wear in the front because they're plastic all the way down.
Third frame strike for Andy Rettig as he continues to put the pressure here on Chuck Jagodzinski. And he's got a good crowd of folks cheering him on here. 45-year-old from Hamburg, his daughter Maddie here, his mom, his dad, Uncle Doug have all made the trip up to Grand Island from Hamburg to come cheer Andy Rettig on as he looks for his second career Beat the Champ victory. And here he is in the fourth frame.
Nice
that
shot.
Sounded good, didn't it?
It did.
A little bit smaller building here for Beat the Champ. 12 lanes on the side that we're on, so it's not one big 24-lane building.
Right.
It's two 12s. And what I think that's going to lead to is a lot more sound.
Yeah, more acoustics.
Just like in the old odds, sounded better than the new buildings do. You know, they're smaller, they're tighter. I think this will be a fun show for you to keep your ears on because you're going to hear the good hits a little more. Chuck's got to finish off this spare. Stacked up on top of each other, so it's a fourth frame spare for Chuck Jagodzinski in what remains a pretty tight match here.
Well, Chuck's no stranger to this place. He does bowl league here on Tuesday nights, so he's probably familiar with the way the lanes break down. But I can tell he's trying to stay on top of the changes. He made a little bit of a move there, which is why he came up light, because it was probably just a little bit too early to make that move.
One of 6 nights a week that Chuck Jagodzinski bowls in a league. Mondays at Broadway, Tuesdays here, Wednesdays at Rapids, Thursdays at Alden, Fridays at Classic, Sundays at Wimbledon. Is there a night or a bowling alley in this town that he isn't hanging out at? And you know what? That's why he's maybe the best guy in town right now.
This feels like a good time to take a short break. We'll be right back with more action on Beat the Champ. Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Let's get back to the action here on WBBZ-TV.
Andy's got a good shot to the pocket, and Andy has put together a couple strikes. So now, in the second half of the game, Chuck really needs to find a way to strike. The 9 pins aren't going to do it for him. So he switched balls, and that ball hooked up high.
And it's a 7-pin left for Andy, who has 3 top 10 career finishes in the Obenauer Masters Tournament, a couple of city team titles, and 6 amateur bowling tour titles. So he has been an outstanding bowler throughout his 35 years in the sport here in Western New York as well. 13 career 300 games for Andy Rettig. Looking to finish the spare off in the 7th.
And it tells you how important it is to make spares while you're fishing around looking for really good ball reaction. Got to make sure you make those spares.
So it's a 27-pin lead at the moment for Andy Rettig as he gets set to go in the 8th frame, and we're close. We're close to him, you know, deciding where this match is going to go now.
Well, that didn't take into account the open frame though for Chuck, so it's a wider gap. It's 37 pins because of the
and
open.
the strike now helps to that as well too. So really now, as Chuck Jagodzinski sets up for the 8th frame, he's going to have some work to do here to keep bowling. And there's only surprise in my voice because we've just seen how good Chuck can be, and there you go. He needed that.
Absolutely, he pretty much needs to go off the sheet now. He can go off the sheet for 211. He's going to need every pin of that.
So
it's still going to require Andy to have an open frame there somewhere. As long as he fills the frames, he's okay.
Determined look on the face of Chuck Jagodzinski. And that certainly will not help. Ninth frame, 2 pins hanging up.
Yeah, this isn't the way we saw this day starting with Chuck.
No, not at all. Just again, because he's been so dominant and so impressive throughout, what seems to be nearly every stop we make on Beat the Champ. It's a bit of a surprise, but hey, that's different lanes, different conditions. Remember, we all may have seen him bowl a week ago on the show, but the way the dynamics of our taping means he hasn't bowled on the show in a month.
True, absolutely true. And this is definitely a different lane condition very different from Classic.
So a pair of open frames has really opened the door for Andy Rettig, and a little bit of look of shock on his face with what he leaves here in the ninth frame, but
he's got Chuck shut out at this point,
right.
But we'll see Chuck again down the road.
Of course we will.
The next qualifier at Rapids will be there next month. It's going to be the end of the month on October 29th and October 30th at 12, 2, and 4. So I'm sure Chuck will be there for that.
Back to where we started, up at Rapids.
Right.
Where this whole fun adventure we all know as the traveling roadshow of Beat the Champ got going back in January.
I can't believe it's been almost a full year already.
Yeah, it really has. So here's the 10th frame now for Andy, and even though he left the open frame there, he's going to have this thing wrapped up just with good solid counts here, and he will be moving on. And we'll have a Battle of the Andes in our next match here. Andy Moran from right here at Island Lanes, the next opponent up for Andy Rettig. Good strike in the 10th for Andy.
And we'll bring on the always entertaining Mike Mallwitz to fill us in on
Thanks for the warning.
Andy.
Thanks for the warning.
I'm sure he'll have some Andy stories for us.
Oh, I'm sure you will. Yes, and it's always fun to talk to Mike, and obviously we're here on his home base at Mallwitz's Island Lanes in Grand Island.
Little different role for him, actually, with the ladder out and fixing things up.
Yeah.
That's not normally how we see him.
That's true. So he actually had an excuse for not making qualifying for the show.
He wasn't allowed to bowl.
He was not allowed to bowl, right. Final throw here for Andy Rettig to post his final score up, and it's an impressive performance for Rettig in his third appearance here on Beat the Champ. And up on the board for Andy Rettig is a 215, and that's going to be enough to win. Chuck Jagodzinski will roll things out, so just the third time in 11 matches that Chuck Jagodzinski has not won here on Beat the Champ.
Yeah, I was really wondering if the difference between the practice pair and the TV pair was going to show up, because they practiced for a while to get loose and all of that on the practice pair, but it hooked a lot more, so it did have a little bit of an effect.
We want to make sure that you stay tuned towards the end of the show for the release of the Modern Window Word of the Week right after the show. You could win $5,000 worth of new windows complete with installation, all from Modern Window. That is coming up towards the end of the show here today on Beat the Champ. So a final score posted of 167 for Chuck Jagodzinski. Guess that counts as a little bit of an upset to start our run here at Island Lanes.
Yep, it's anybody's match now. It's turned out a little different than we thought.
Yes, it did. So Andy Rettig does pull the win, maybe a little surprising over Chuck Jagodzinski. We'll talk to both guys about how this went and preview our next match when Beat the Champ continues from here at Island Lanes in Grand Island. Stay tuned. We're back right after this. It's a 215 to 167 victory for Andy Rettig over Chuck Jagodzinski. And Chuck, because you've established such a high standard and you've been so successful on the show, I feel like my question to you is, what happened out here?
I don't know. I bowl here every Tuesday. The shot's nothing like this. I don't know what he did, but I just couldn't figure it out. And I don't have a right ball for this. What's out there, I don't know what to tell you. I sucked out there. Good bowling, Andy.
Well, I like your honesty, Chuck, and we appreciate that. So it's interesting to hear him talk about it that way.
On that note, you come in taking on someone that's won as much as Chuck has. What was your strategy today?
I just really wanted to make some good shots and hope I got some good carry and try and stay with him if I could. That's all.
Carry had a lot to do with it today.
Yeah.
All right, well, Mike Mallwitz is going to join us in our next segment, so Chuck will ask him exactly what he did here today, because I'm sure you'll like to know the answer, but Andy Rettig's got some more bowling to do. We'll get you ready, and we'll have our next match. Andy Rettig and Andy Moran is next up from here at Island Lanes in Grand Island. You're watching Beat the Champ. Here we are, set to go with match number 2. We get our first look at Andrew Moran from right here in Grand Island, a regular here at Island Lanes, and he is the challenger for match number 2 against Andy Rettig, coming off that big win that we just talked about. And we get our first look at Andrew Moran, who will start things off. And Sue, the first thing that you notice about Andrew is a rather unusual approach.
Yeah,
the results seem to be okay, though.
He seems to get into a crouching position, and then stops and gets upright again, and then just starts and has actually a short approach.
Yeah, and by the way, we're joined here by Mike Mallwitz, our buddy Mike Mallwitz, obviously one of the owners here at Mallwitz's Island Lanes on Grand Island. Mike's going to guide us through the next couple of matches here. So start off by, you know Andy as well as anybody. He's a regular here. As to Sue's point, it's a little unusual to watch him bowl.
Yeah, Andy grew up here in juniors. He started when he was really young, and so I've known him his whole life. And he bowled a tournament one time, and there was an article written about him in the paper, and they called it a unique three-step approach, which basically that's what it is. You know, he stops, resets, and takes 3 steps to the line, and it works for him. Though he's been bowling really well for a long time like that. So.
Well, obviously he's the number 2 qualifier coming into our broadcast here, and put up some good qualifying numbers to wind up right behind Andy Rettig. So we got the 2 best and hottest guys going at each other right now in Rettig versus Moran. And Sue, it's got to be a nice little confidence boost for Andy Rettig coming off a win over Chuck Jagodzinski.
Yeah, well, he found the pocket real early, and he was actually able to get 3 strikes in a row. And Chuck had a little bit of a problem carrying there in the beginning, and really Chuck had to go kind of into panic mode to try to catch up, and it just didn't work out.
Well, Chuck, in our interview that we just wrapped up, wanted to know what exactly you did to these lanes to have Chuck Jagodzinski bowl a 167.
Isn't that funny? Bowlers always want to blame it on the lanes, but ultimately it comes down to shot making, and you have to throw good shots and be consistent.
Little late fall there for Andrew Moran, and he gets a second strike here in frame number 2. So
yeah, Andy Moran really turned it on in qualifying. He had a couple attempts at qualifying, didn't make it, and then the last night of qualifying he shot 763 to make the first cut, and then he shot 762 to make the TV finals. So he really turned it on at the end of qualifying there.
Wow.
Overall average of 227 in the qualifying for Andy Moran. So, and again, as Sue, you've talked about this a lot. This is his place. This is his home. He knows these lanes. He knows the conditions better, almost better than anybody.
Oh, almost got the, almost got that one to go. Sent a little messenger over.
Yeah, a little messenger there. Didn't quite hit the 10 pin, but yeah, Andy knows the lanes. He knows pair to pair. Like I said, he's been bowling here since he was a little kid, so he knows the drill, and he should be pretty comfortable here.
32 years old from Grand Island, an account manager for a wholesaler is the profession for Andy Moran, and been bowling for 20 of those 32 years. And as Mike said, almost all of them are here at Island Lanes. And he's got a good crowd on hand to cheer him on. Dad, grandfather, brother-in-law, all here to see if Andy Moran can come up with his first Beat the Champ victory. There's Janelle Sabin and the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard early on in this Battle of the Andes, Rettig and Moran. Well, tell us a little bit about the family history here at Island Lanes, and I know this goes back to your folks, and you've sort of taken things over a little bit, but give us the backstory on what the history of Island Lanes here on Whiting Road in Grand Island.
Well, it started in the 70s. My grandfather, my father's dad, he owned Schiller Park Lanes on Genesee Street in Buffalo. So that's how my father got started in the bowling business. And, you know, my dad wanted to branch out and get his own center, and it happened to be here on the island. That was in 1980, the year I was born. So I literally grew up here every year of my life. And we've been here 36 years going strong. And Grand Island's really supportive, you know.
Was this bowling center already here, or
Yes.
did they build it?
Yes, the bowling center was built in 1956.
Again, that same time frame as so many of
That's
the older
almost all of them,
brands.
right?
Yeah.
1950, somewhere between 55 and 65 is, I think, where every bowling alley in this
Yeah.
town has been built.
Throughout the years, this place has had, I think, 7 or 8 different owners, and I think the longest running owner was about 6-7 years, and so we've had it for 36 years straight. So I think that speaks to what my mom and dad have built around here.
What's it like? You know, obviously you said you grew up in this building, in this business. What's it like to be part of a family business that's had such strong ties to one place like this for so many years, and ties to the community as well too, as Andy Rettig nails another strike?
That's the thing, is the community thing. It's probably the coolest part of the whole deal. You know, all of our family friends, you know, our lifelong friends have been made in this building right here. You know, I can't tell you how many people, countless, hundreds of friends, and you know, they become part of your family. We've known them all for 30-some years. So
Plus, being
it's
on the
really
island,
cool.
it's sort of a self-contained community.
Right.
No, good strike, another good one for Andy Moran, and you could just hear that one pound the pins for the third strike in 4 frames for Andy Moran.
It's so interesting because normally somebody uses the approach for momentum, for ball speed, and obviously he takes some of that out of there by having that 3-step approach, but he still has good ball speed, good leverage.
He's actually picked up his ball speed lately. He used to struggle a little bit with slower ball speed compared to his rev rate, but in the last few years he's done some work on his game, and he definitely throws it at a decent speed.
He didn't like that one as soon as he threw it, and he leaves the 10-pin hanging up, but you could hear him sort of groan as soon as he threw it that he didn't like it.
But speaking back to the community, like Andy's family, his mom and dad, his little sister grew up bowling here. You know, that's what I'm talking about as far as, you know, they become part of our family.
And Sue makes a very interesting point just about the geography of it, is that there's a kinship amongst Grand Islanders in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You know, I mean, it's you know, hey, it's no big deal to pop over the bridges one way or the other, but there is sort of that sense that it's a little different than if you live in Tonawanda or Amherst or Williamsville or Orchard Park. You guys on Grand Island tend to bond a little closer together, don't you?
Yeah, the loyalty and like the pride of a small town like that is definitely different than, like you said, Tonawanda or a place like that, where not necessarily, you know, people have the same loyalty to people.
Yeah,
and
it's
businesses around the
bigger.
area.
I mean, there's sometimes 3-4 leagues bowling in a place like that at one time. Where here, you have, you know, 1 or 2 leagues bowling. So are your leagues generally 12 lanes, or do they spill over onto the other side?
We keep our leagues at 12 lanes, so it's just even the layout of the building. Our leagues, you know, are closer. I feel closer to the people in my league because we're all in this same room together. It's a different feeling than when you're in a 50-lane center and, you know, you can see for days down the lanes. So it's definitely cool.
We are in a super tight match right now between the Andes, Rettig and Moran. It's going back and forth, and we're getting strikes and spares, and good throws, and there's another one for Andy Rettig. That's his 3rd in a row.
We're going to be back with more Beat the Champ bowling action in just a minute. Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Let's get back to the action here on WBBZ-TV.
Well, he's going against a guy who's got 5 strikes in a row, so that's Andy Rettig has done a good job
Again,
of
it
putting
comes
the
down to
pressure
carry.
on. Right. Go ahead.
How do the lefties normally fare here at your house?
Very well. for a while we were known as a lefty house. The league bowlers all kind of razz each other. You know, they kind of razz the lefties for being too easy. But overall, I mean, the righties score just as well as the lefties. You know, like
Sometimes it just
earlier,
comes down to carry.
It comes down to carry, making good shots.
I think the moves might be a little bit more frequent for the right-handers because it seems to me that you have to be on top of the moves here.
Yeah, the right-handers definitely have to.
Ooh, something happened there. What happened there?
Just looks like it hung up on his thumb a little bit. I see him using a little bit of easy slide on his thumb in between shots, so I don't know if he didn't use enough.
So it's an open frame in the 9th for Andy Moran, and that may be the decider, Sue.
That pretty much puts Andy Rettig in the driver's seat at this point.
Working on 5 in a row.
Yeah, barring a complete disaster here.
And that's 6 strikes in a row, and that should clinch a second straight win for Andy Rettig. Well, what else you got going on here at Island Lanes? I know you're deep into league play at this point as we hit that time of the year in October, but what else exciting is happening here?
All kinds of stuff, man. We're just constantly having fun and keeping busy. Bills games, you know, the Bills are on 2 wins now, so we're we get a huge crowd for the Bills games. We play the shout song and we score, and just a great crowd. You know, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so it's a fun place to come on Sundays, get a little bowling in, watch the Bills play a little bit, and see if they can't keep their momentum going. As we tape this, they're coming off the big win over the Patriots. It'll air after the Rams game. We'll see how things shake out there, but you know, everyone in this town is always eternally optimistic about the Bills.
Well, we were saying that about community, and I know that you can come in here at any time, and there'll be people socializing at the bar, maybe not even throwing a bowling ball, but this is a big place for the community to gather too. I definitely know this is a fun place to be.
For sure. We're one of the few centers, I think, that have a solid, regular crowd that comes in not just to bowl, but to eat and, you know, socialize. Like you said, we have an extensive menu. Our food is amazing. We're known as having the best chicken fingers on Grand Island. So I would even challenge some to say the best in Western New York. I know that's a bold statement.
It sounds like with lunch coming up, we'll have to be the judge.
I think I'll have to put mine up against yours.
Chicken wings will be served.
All right, got it. Well, you saw the 262 on the board for Andy Rettig. He almost pulled off that pretty nifty little spare there in the final roll of the 10th frame. So Andy Moran will bowl out here, but it's going to be another win for Andy Rettig. Our Battle of the Andes goes to Andy Rettig of Hamburg over Andy Moran of Grand Island. Andy Moran will post up his final score in just a moment, and then it's off to our next match, which brings us to one of the other outstanding Beat the Champ bowlers, and that is Mike Zarcone. So if Andy Rettig wants to pull off a sweep, Sue, he's going to have to work a little harder.
Well, we know that Mike Zarcone is going to give him a tough match.
Yes, we do. We always know we can. That's something you can count on.
For sure, Mike bowled very well during qualifying here, and he fares very well here over the years. So it should be a good match.
Couple of strikes in a row here. Strong finish out for Andy Moran in his Beat the Champ debut. Showing himself well here, and that's a name to watch as we move around Western New York to keep an eye on whether Andy Moran is a guy that starts moving up the ranks of Beat the Champ bowlers. Final throw, we'll post up our final score. And don't forget, stay tuned for the release of the Modern Window Word of the Week. It's right after the show. You could win $5,000 worth of new windows complete with installation from Modern Window. 262 to 213 is our final score. Andy Rettig comes up with the win. We'll talk to the Andes and preview our next match when we return. We thank Mike Mallwitz for joining us. As always, you raise the entertainment level of the show every time you're on.
Thanks for having me, and I can't wait for our 4th show of October.
We're gonna have it's a house championship, right? We're gonna have a lot of fun with that. So we'll see Mike back in a couple of weeks, but we'll come back and wrap this match up when we return to Mallwitz's Island Lanes on Grand Island. Beat the Champ is back right after this. It's a win for Andy Rettig over Andy Moran here in match number 2 at Island Lanes in Grand Island. How much did you think that your advantage of having spent a lot of time bowling here might be enough to carry you through today?
Well, I figured an Andy would win. It was just the wrong one, unfortunately.
Hey, come on, that's my job to come up with the bad play on words.
Yeah, I mean, I bowled here my whole life, and unfortunately, I ran into a buzzsaw over here with Andy, and he chopped me down.
Yeah, you know, we talked a lot about your style and your approach. Give us a sense of where that developed, because it's a little unusual. I'm sure you've heard that before.
I really don't know. I mean, through high school, I had a regular 4-step. I just tried to slow my foot speed down a little, and now I'm real slow, as you can see, but you know, it's just everybody's unique, I guess.
Yeah, well, it was fun to watch, and you did a very nice job with it as well, too. Sue?
Well, Andy, your strategy of making good shots seemed to carry you through another match. Have the lanes changed for you as you've gone along at all?
Alley 8, the lanes, the oil's carrying down a little bit, so they're going a little straighter. But other than that, 7's starting to open up. So just hopefully keep making good shots and see what happens.
Shots.
All right, well, keep making good shots, and Andy will keep winning. He's got a challenge coming up. Mike Zarcone, the next opponent for Andy Rettig. We'll get you ready for that match when we return. It's Beat the Champ on Grand Island, and we are back right after this. Third match of the day here at Island Lanes, and there's our first look at Mike Zarcone. Not certainly our first look on Beat the Champ. Mike has been as steady and as successful as anybody. This is Mike Zarcone now making his 7th Beat the Champ show appearance. 6 wins and 4 losses, including 2 weekly trophy wins for Mike Zarcone. There you go. Typical fashion, as you've seen in the previous other 6 shows, he always gets off to a strong start. Mike Zarcone's 7th appearance now ties Matt Zazowski for the most Beat the Champ show appearances.
I know, it seems like it wouldn't be a visit to a bowling center if we don't see Mike Zarcone.
He's like the furniture. He's always here when we show up. So, but that's because he's good, and he's a Hall of Famer. We'll talk more about that in a moment. So Andy Rettig, who is hot, he's got his work cut out for him. And right off the bat, it's a battle of the Titans. These guys are both bowling well. Rettig coming off the pair of wins so far today over Chuck Jagodzinski with a 215 and a 262. Impressive work done by Rettig in the win over Andy Moran. We're at Mallwitz's Island Lanes on Whitehaven Road in Grand Island. There you got all the information that you need. IslandLanes.com for all the updates on the league and times and everything else. If you want to make a little trip up here to Grand Island, at Beat the Champ TV, and like us on the Facebook page for all the latest information. 2 strikes in a row for Andy Rettig. Boy, he is, again, it's a cliche, Sue, make good shots. You just said it to him, but he gets it. He knows just be steady, be solid, make good shots. You're not going to strike every time, but just keep the errors and the bad shots and the crazy spare pickups out of the way.
And it sounds a lot easier than it is. I mean, it's hard not to let the outside things get in your head, like someone like a Mike Zarcone, who, you know, is able to make something out of every lane condition. He really just is that good of a bowler. So it's hard to keep your emotion steady.
Yep. Tonawanda's Mike Zarcone, 48 years old. He's been bowling almost all of his life. As we get a look at the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard early on in this match, and again, we've rattled off Mike's achievements on this show, but his achievements throughout the bowling community in Western New York go well beyond that. 2014 Obenauer Masters champion among his many titles, and coming up in November, he will enter the Greater Buffalo USBC Bowling Hall of Fame.
Right, so well-deserved. He's had a great bowling career, and he's getting recognized for it at the end of November.
So we've had 2 of the best and most successful bowlers in town on this show, and Andy Rettig has already beaten one of them. Can he do it a second time? And in the process, he would become just the 4th Beat the Champ bowler to sweep a weekly show. And the 10-pin will hold up for Andy Rettig. We're starting to see a little more of that as we move through the day.
Well, as he explained to us in the last interview, lanes 7 and 8 have changed a little bit differently for him, and 8 has a little bit of a wiggle spot, hangs just a little bit, doesn't turn up as strong or where he wants to. So how he's adjusting to that is a challenge for him. And in this case, it came up just a little bit light, and he didn't get the 10-pin out.
There was a late curve in there for the spare from Andy Rettig. And
It really
is that
was.
thing going to turn? Is it going to turn? Well, it did, and he gets the spare. So Andy Rettig with 2 strikes and a spare versus Mike Zarcone with 3 strikes to start this match
I was
off.
kind of stunned there for a split second.
Even
watching
you,
it.
huh? It was awfully late, wasn't it?
Yeah.
As we mentioned, Andy Rettig is from Hamburg, works for the Department of Homeland Security, 45 years old. Bowls regularly at Abbott Alleys on Mondays and in a Saturday travel league.
Oh.
Learned how to bowl from his dad. Very common amongst all of our bowlers. Family traditions passed down from one to the other, but Andy always wants us to point out that his dad was a big inspiration in him getting involved in the sport. So now we got the 7-pin hanging up on this side on these lanes as opposed to the 10 on the other.
Yeah, we haven't really seen Andy deal with the adversity of not carrying yet. So we'll see what kind of spare shooter he is.
Well, pretty good on that one.
Yep.
And now we move back to Mike Zarcone. Monday nights at Classic Lanes with a 235 average. Wednesdays at Airport Lanes with a 233, and he slacks off on Saturdays in the Travel League, only a 230 average.
Well, that's because he has to go from house to house.
Yeah, okay, I got it. Not gonna go down. Boy, that's those new pins there,
Yeah.
right?
That one got a little wider on him.
That
He's got a
thing
lot.
wobbled back and forth about 6 times.
He's got a good amount of. He's created himself a little bit of area. That one got a little bit to the righter than he probably would have liked to, and it didn't hit as hard.
Well, he's kind of skirting the side of the lanes there a little bit. Again, another bit of a late turn, but it results in the spare for Mike Zarcone. I think the interesting thing, Sue, is particularly with a guy like Mike that we have seen so regularly, and it's, you know him as well as anybody also, but can you see whether there's anything different about his approach, about his throws, just because we see him so much?
No, actually, he's able to play the game. He is able to adjust with his own game. He doesn't, change his hand position a lot. He doesn't change how he attacks the lane. He just uses bowling balls to adjust. So you'll see he has kind of like a scoopy, different kind of release that is his trick because it creates a lot of carry for him. Mm-hmm. So I like to call that a trick because it's something definitely individual to him, and it gives him a lot of success.
Something that he's kind of figured out on his own.
Mm-hmm.
So back to Andy Rettig in a match that at the moment Mike Zarcone holds about a 30-pin lead. And that's, you got a little lucky there. The messenger pin falling over and knocking the 7-pin saved Andy Rettig from a much more difficult spare pickup.
That's a little example there of where the lane is hanging on him a little bit, because that's what happens. It wiggles in that spot, and it doesn't. Oh, you have to have a lane. You have to have. Oh, it's good. Okay. So it wiggles a little bit, and it delays the hook, so it came up light. And it's kind of in his head now that spot's there. So now it's even a bigger challenge because he's thinking about it when he's up on the lane.
The action will continue on Beat the Champ in just a minute. Welcome back to Beat the Champ.
Don't forget, at the end of the show, coming up in just a few minutes, we want you to stay tuned for the release of the Modern Window Word of the Week. Right after the show, you could win $5,000 worth of new windows, complete with installation, from our friends at Modern Window. Getting to be that time of the year where you want to make sure the windows are nice and sealed up. Winter is coming. Even though when you see all the guys wearing shorts here as we tape this in early October, it's a little bit, doesn't feel like it's coming. There's Andy back to a strike.
Middle October, we're still in Indian summer, but
that's okay.
It's going to get cold fast.
Yeah, and I don't know who I believe on all these things, but I saw something the other day that said we're going to have more snow than normal this winter. At least some of the experts say that. I don't know that I believe it, but
I'm sure our snowplow guys won't be happy with that.
Maybe they will be happy. So the 10-pin hangs up for Mike Zarcone here. That ends a stretch of 3 consecutive strikes for him. Amongst the many titles for Mike Zarcone, New York Scratch All Events title right in here in 2016, Buffalo City Scratch Team title also in 2016. We get to the point where Mike Zarcone only puts the most recent tournaments won on his bio sheet. We don't have enough room for all of them.
I'm sure he doesn't want to miss that, although he's got a pretty nice lead going. He only needs 2 spares to shut out Andy at this point.
Right,
so.
we did get the open frame there, as you saw on the 8th. But Mike Zarcone's still well in control, and that's a balance. That's a balance, way to balance it out. So Andy Rettig facing a big deficit here, and unless the wheels come off Mike Zarcone, which they don't usually do, Andy's run of 2 in a row will come to an end. But every time we see Andy, bowls a little bit better and gets a little more used to the setting and the show and the competition level. And like we said, if you beat Chuck Jagodzinski on this show, we should be giving you a trophy for that anyway.
Yeah, we didn't know if he'd do what he did at Jamestown and run the whole day. So Andy did bowl great here and have a really nice showing on our show. Even though he's won matches, though, we're going to give Mike Zarcone that trophy again.
Yes, we are. And that will now be the 3rd time you have handed the big trophy to Mike Zarcone, which keeps him 1 off of our trophy leader, and that's Matt Zazowski, who has 4 of those trophies. So there's a strike to start the 10th for Andy Rettig, but too much of a hill to climb. Or correct that, yes, starts off the 10th with the strike.
So in 2 weeks, we have qualifiers coming up. We plan, it's over Halloween weekend, the 29th and 30th, Saturday and Sunday. Qualifying squads at 12, 2, and 4.
Are you required to wear costume for those qualifiers?
That would be interesting now,
yes,
wouldn't
it would. Maybe that might be our fun exhibition.
They should all come
episode.
dressed as Mike Zarcone, so they can make the
there
show.
we go. We will all come dressed as Mike Zarcone. I like that idea. If we could all come dressed and then bowl like Mike Zarcone, I'm all in. I'm all in. 203 on the board for Andy Rettig. Isn't going to be enough, as Mike Zarcone will finish things out here in the 10th frame for a victory. And we're going to get to see Mike going to come back next week here to Island Lanes, where his first opponent will be another legendary bowler, and that's Gary Kinyon. So brace yourselves for that one. How about that for a battle of the Titans next week? Mike Zarcone and Gary Kinyon. A couple of more here for Mike to post up the final score. Good way to start things off here on our trip to Grand Island. Good beginning for our 4-week stay here. We've got some great bowlers coming up. We know Mike Zarcone's going to be in show 2. We're going to have a lot of fun in the 4th show, as Mike Mallwitz alluded to, the Island Lanes House Championship, and there's going to be some format changes that are involved in that I'll let you explain later, but that'll be a lot of fun as well too. So
I believe he's bringing a guest commentator on to challenge us as well.
225 to 203 is the win for Mike Zarcone over Andy Rettig. So Mike Zarcone comes up with his 7th Beat the Champ victory, and he will get that trophy from Sue for the 3rd time, and we will do that when we come back. To wrap up this week's show, it's Mike Zarcone with a win over Andy Rettig. We're back to talk to both gentlemen when Beat the Champ returns to Island Lanes right after this. Score in this one, Mike Zarcone with a 225. 295 to Andy Rettig's 203. Boy, as well as you were bowling in those first two matches, Andy, things seemed to get away from you a little bit. Maybe the lanes started to grab that ball a little bit, didn't they?
Yeah, a little bit. 8 was getting trickier and trickier, and I knew that was going to be the difference in the match, and I didn't make enough good shots on that lane. So.
Right. Well, and obviously, you know, when you're bowling against Mike, you got to make a lot of good shots,
Absolutely,
don't you?
always.
Well, a good performance by Andy here, and we've already seen him a few times, and I know we're going to see him again soon.
But Mike swept right in. Wanted to get another one of these trophies to take home with you.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Well, the third time, you got to start making some room for those.
Yeah, well, we got room. More than enough room.
How'd you find the lanes today?
The right lane, just like Andy said, was a little tricky. Yeah, it's gonna be an all-day thing. I think that right lane's gonna be a little tricky.
All right, well, Mike's going to have to work on that because he's coming back for next week's show. We've got some good bowlers lined up, and we'll preview next week's show and wrap up our first week stop here at Mallwitz's Island Lanes. Beat the Champ returns right after this. Well, Sue, I think what's great about sports in general and bowling specifically is that it's so unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen. Chuck Jagodzinski comes into this week's show red hot. He doesn't win. Mike Zarcone, equally red hot. He does win. Why is it like that?
Well, and it did. It looked like Andy had a great shot, and it was going to carry through. And Mike Zarcone came in, and Andy's shot kind of went away a little bit. And that is the unpredictability of bowling and how the lanes change, especially in a place like this with lanes. We've talked about that before. And making good shots and dealing with how the changes are on the lanes is definitely part of it. So you never really can know.
Yeah, well, Mike Zarcone's pretty good about adjusting to all that. He's going to have to be good because his next match next week against one of the other legends of Buffalo bowling, that's Gary Kinyon. So that's a big reason for you to make sure you join us when Beat the Champ comes back to Island Lanes next week. For the entire crew here at WBBZ and, of course, Sue Novoisky, my name is Paul Peck. We'll see you next week on Beat the Champ.